In the shadowy world of 1970s phone phreaking and early computer hacking, when technology was dominated by men in lab coats and college dorms, one woman carved her name into digital history with nothing but her voice, her wit, and an unbreakable will to penetrate the most secure systems on Earth. Susan Thunder wasn't just a hacker. She was a master manipulator, a social engineering virtuoso, and a criminal mastermind who could sweet-talk her way into classified government databases and corporate mainframes with a single phone call. Her story reads like a cyberpunk novel, filled with FBI manhunts, underground networks, and a romance that would ultimately lead to her downfall. This is the untold story of the woman who hacked America before the internet even existed. Susan Thunder's journey into the underground world of hacking began not with computers, but with a childhood marked by instability and a desperate need for control. Born Susan Headley in the 1950s, she grew up in a tumultuous household where traditional authority figures failed her repeatedly. This early disillusionment with conventional power structures would later fuel her rebellion against the established order of telecommunications and computing. Unlike the stereotypical image of hackers as antisocial computer nerds hunched over keyboards in darkened basements, Thunder's entry into the digital underground was through the art of social engineering, the practice of manipulating people rather than machines. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, she discovered the world of phone phreaking, a subculture of individuals who explored and exploited the telephone system's vulnerabilities. Thunder's weapon of choice wasn't a computer terminal or a blue box, the famous tone-generating device used by phone phreaks, but rather her voice and her uncanny ability to assume different personas. She could transform herself over the phone into anyone she needed to be, a confused secretary, an authoritative supervisor, a helpless customer, or a flirtatious operator. This chameleon-like quality made her incredibly effective at what hackers call social engineering, the art of manipulating human psychology to bypass security measures. Her initial forays into phreaking were motivated partly by curiosity and partly by necessity. The telephone system in the 1970s was a vast, complex network that few people understood, but Thunder instinctively grasped how human psychology could be used to navigate its bureaucratic maze. She would call telephone company employees, impersonate various officials, and gradually extract the information she needed to make free long-distance calls or access restricted numbers. What set Thunder apart from her male counterparts was not just her method, but her ambition. While many phone phreaks were content to make free calls or play pranks, Thunder saw the telephone system as a gateway to something much larger. She recognized that every major corporation and government agency relied on telecommunications, and that the human operators and technicians who maintained these systems were the weakest links in their security chains. That her reputation in the underground community grew rapidly. Other hackers and phreaks began to seek her out, not just for her skills, but for her fearlessness. She would attempt social engineering attacks that others considered too risky, targeting high-profile organizations and government agencies with a boldness that bordered on recklessness. Thunder's early success came from her deep understanding of human nature and organizational psychology. She studied how different types of businesses operated, learned their internal jargon and hierarchies, and developed detailed personas that could withstand scrutiny. Her preparation was meticulous. She would spend hours researching her targets, understanding their corporate cultures, and identifying the psychological triggers that would make employees comply with her requests. By the mid-1970s, Susan Thunder had established herself as one of the most skilled social engineers in the underground community. Her gender, rather than being a hindrance, became one of her greatest assets. In an era when women were rarely found in technical roles, her feminine voice often disarmed suspicious security personnel and made her impersonations more believable. Susan Thunder's mastery of social engineering transformed her from a curious phone freak into one of the most feared and respected hackers of her generation. Her techniques were so sophisticated and her success rate so high that she became the gold standard for psychological manipulation in the hacking community. What made her truly dangerous was her ability to combine deep technical knowledge with an almost supernatural understanding of human behavior. Thunder's approach to social engineering was methodical and scientific. She developed what now be recognized as advanced psychological profiling techniques, studying her targets extensively before making contact. She would research company directories, organizational charts, and internal procedures, often spending weeks understanding the corporate culture and communication patterns of her intended victims. This preparation allowed her to craft personas that were not just believable, but perfectly tailored to exploit specific psychological vulnerabilities. Her signature technique involved what she called authority laddering, starting with low-level employees and gradually working her way up the corporate hierarchy by using information gleaned from each successive conversation. She would call a receptionist pretending to be from the IT department, extract basic information about computer systems, then use that information to call a technician while impersonating a manager. Each conversation built upon the last, creating a chain of seemingly legitimate interactions that ultimately granted her access to the most sensitive systems. One of Thunder's most audacious exploits involved penetrating the security of a major defense contractor. Using nothing but phone calls, she convinced employees to reveal passwords, system configurations, and even classified project details. The attack began with her impersonating a new employee who had forgotten her login credentials. By displaying intimate knowledge of company procedures gathered through previous calls, she established credibility with the help desk. Over the course of several weeks, she systematically mapped the company's entire computer network and gained access to files related to military contracts. Thunder's gender played a crucial role in her success, but not in the way most people might expect. Rather than relying solely on feminine wiles or seduction, she weaponized societal expectations about women's roles and capabilities. In the 1970s, most security personnel couldn't conceive of a woman as a serious security threat. When Thunder called pretending to be a secretary or administrative assistant, her targets often let their guard down completely, assuming that women in such roles posed no danger to sensitive systems. She also exploited the male-dominated culture of the technology industry to her advantage. When impersonating technical personnel, she would adopt a slightly helpless or confused tone, encouraging male employees to be helpful and share more information than they should have. Conversely, when she needed to project authority, she could convincingly portray a stern female supervisor, tapping into workplace dynamics where employees often felt more obligated to comply with direct orders from women in management positions. Thunder's reputation for social engineering prowess attracted attention from both admirers and law enforcement. Fellow hackers sought her mentorship, wanting to learn her techniques and benefit from her expertise. However, her growing notoriety also made her a target for federal investigators, who were beginning to understand the threat posed by social engineering attacks. Her success rate was legendary. Colleagues claimed she had never failed to penetrate a target she had set her sights on. This perfect record was partly due to her careful target selection and extensive preparation, but also reflected her willingness to abort operations if she sensed suspicion or resistance. As Susan Thunder's reputation grew throughout the late 1970s, she became a central figure in an increasingly sophisticated network of hackers, phone freaks, and digital outlaws. This underground community operated like a shadowy parallel society, with its own codes of conduct, hierarchies, and systems of mutual support. Thunder's unique skills and fearless approach to high-profile targets made her both a valuable ally and a dangerous liability within these circles. The hacker underground of this era was far more collaborative than popular culture suggests. Rather than isolated individuals working alone, groups like Thunders formed tight-knit communities that shared information, techniques, and resources. They communicated through encrypted channels, met at technology conferences and computer clubs, and developed elaborate systems for protecting their identities and activities. Thunder's apartment became an unofficial headquarters for West Coast hackers, a place where newcomers could learn advanced techniques and veterans could plan their most ambitious operations. Thunder's involvement in this network brought her into contact with some of the most notorious hackers of the era. She worked alongside individuals who would later become legends in cybersecurity circles, sharing techniques and collaborating on increasingly complex attacks. Her social engineering expertise was perfectly complemented by others' technical skills. In computer programming, electronics, and telecommunications engineering, however, Thunder's high-profile activities inevitably attracted federal attention. The FBI's Computer Crime Unit, still in its infancy, began tracking her activities in the late 1970s. Her attacks on defense contractors and government agencies had crossed from mere mischief into potential national security threats. Federal agents launched a comprehensive investigation using traditional surveillance methods that were often ill-suited to tracking digital criminals. The cat and mouse game between Thunder and law enforcement escalated dramatically when she successfully penetrated systems belonging to major telecommunications companies. Her ability to access and manipulate phone company databases represented a fundamental threat to national communications infrastructure. FBI investigators realized they were dealing with someone far more sophisticated and dangerous than typical criminals. Thunder's response to increased federal scrutiny was characteristically bold. Rather than scaling back her activities, she seemed to relish the challenge of evading law enforcement while continuing her operations. She developed elaborate counter-surveillance techniques, used multiple identities, and created complex communication systems to coordinate with her network while avoiding detection. The psychological profile that emerged from FBI investigations painted Thunder as a complex individual driven by more than simple criminal greed. Agents noted her apparent addiction to the intellectual challenge and adrenaline rush of successful penetrations. Unlike many hackers who were motivated primarily by financial gain or destructive impulses, Thunder seemed driven by a desire to prove her superiority over security systems and the people who designed them. Her relationship with law enforcement became increasingly personal and antagonistic. Some accounts suggest that she occasionally taunted federal agents, calling them directly to demonstrate her ability to penetrate their own communication systems. This psychological warfare added an additional layer of complexity to the investigation. As agents found themselves dealing with someone who understood their methods and limitations better than they understood hers, the federal investigation into Thunder's activities also revealed the broader scope of the hacker underground. Agents discovered that the network she helped coordinate was far more extensive and sophisticated than they had initially realized, with connections spanning multiple countries and involving dozens of highly skilled individuals. This realization marked a turning point in how law enforcement approached cybercrime, leading to the development of specialized units and investigative techniques. The downfall of Susan Thunder reads like a classic tragedy, where the protagonist's greatest strength becomes their ultimate weakness. For Thunder, who had built her career on manipulating human psychology and exploiting emotional vulnerabilities, it was her own capacity for genuine emotion that would ultimately lead to her capture and the end of her reign as the underground's most feared social engineer dot in the early 1980s. Thunder became romantically involved with another prominent figure in the hacker community. This relationship marked a dramatic shift in her previously calculated and compartmentalized approach to personal connections. For someone who had spent years assuming false identities and manipulating others' emotions, experiencing authentic feelings created unprecedented vulnerabilities. Her romantic partner was deeply embedded in the same underground networks that had sustained Thunder's criminal career. However, unlike Thunder, who had managed to maintain some distance from law enforcement attention through careful operational security, her partner had attracted significant federal scrutiny. FBI investigators had been building a case against him for years, accumulating evidence of multiple felonies related to computer intrusion and telecommunications fraud. The relationship created operational security challenges that Thunder had never faced before. Her meticulous compartmentalization began to break down as she shared resources, information, and techniques with someone she trusted completely. For the first time in her criminal career, she allowed emotional considerations to override security protocols that had previously kept her invisible to law enforcement. Federal agents, recognizing the opportunity presented by Thunder's emotional vulnerability, began applying pressure designed to exploit the relationship. They arrested her partner on multiple charges, then offered him a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation in their investigation of Thunder's activities. The psychological pressure was immense. He faced decades in federal prison unless he provided information that would help capture one of the FBI's most wanted cyber criminals. The betrayal, when it came, was devastating both personally and operationally. Thunder's partner provided federal agents with detailed information about her methods, her targets, and her plans. More damaging still, he revealed the emotional and psychological techniques that had made her so effective, giving investigators insights that allowed them to predict and counter her future moves. Thunder's arrest in 1983 marked the end of an era in cybercrime. Federal agents, armed with inside information about her methods and psychology, were able to anticipate her attempts at social engineering even during the arrest and interrogation process. The same techniques that had made her legendary in the hacker community proved ineffective against adversaries who understood her methods intimately. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the full scope of Thunder's activities for the first time. Prosecutors presented evidence of dozens of successful penetrations spanning nearly a decade, involving targets ranging from private corporations to sensitive government agencies. The technical sophistication and psychological complexity of her operations forced courts to grapple with entirely new categories of crime. Thunder's conviction represented more than just the capture of an individual criminal. It marked the end of the pioneer era of social engineering. Her techniques, now exposed and analyzed by law enforcement, became less effective as organizations developed countermeasures specifically designed to thwart her methods. The personal cost was equally profound. Thunder faced not only lengthy imprisonment, but the complete dissolution of the underground community that had been her primary social world. Many of her former collaborators, fearing that she might cooperate with authorities as her partner had, distanced themselves completely. Susan Thunder's story represents a crucial chapter in the early history of cybersecurity, one that demonstrates how human psychology remains both our greatest vulnerability and our most powerful defense against digital threats. Her pioneering work in social engineering established techniques that remain relevant today. Even as the technological landscape has evolved beyond recognition, Thunder's legacy extends far beyond her criminal activities. She proved that the most sophisticated security systems could be defeated not through technical exploits, but through understanding and manipulating the human elements within those systems. Modern cybersecurity professionals still study her methods, using her techniques to test organizational defenses and train employees to recognize social engineering attacks. Her story also highlights the often overlooked role of women in early computing and hacking communities. At a time when the technology industry was overwhelmingly male-dominated. Thunder carved out a position of respect and influence through sheer skill and determination, ready to dive deeper into the fascinating world of cybersecurity history. Subscribe to our newsletter for more untold stories of the digital pioneers who shaped our connected world. From forgotten heroes to infamous villains, discover the human stories behind the technology that defines our modern lives. Click here to join thousands of readers exploring the intersection of technology, psychology, and human nature.